for upgrades. This is SRN.
Vengeance is mine, according to Jared. Coming up on Adventures in Odyssey, Jared's scientific aspirations go up in smoke after Rodney Rathbone wrecks his experiment for the science fair. Jared decides it's payback time and begins to accuse Rodney of all the wrongdoings going on around town. But is revenge as sweet as he thinks? Find out next time on Adventures in Odyssey.
Tune in at 6 o'clock tonight and again at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning, right here on your family-friendly radio, Joy FM.
Let's face it, it's not always easy to understand everything you read in the Bible. With over 700,000 words contained in 66 books, the Bible can generate a lot of questions. To get biblical, straightforward answers, call into Bible Answers Live, a live nationwide call-in radio program where you can talk to Pastor Doug Batchelor and ask him your most difficult Bible questions.
Hear Bible Answers every weekday at noon right here on Joy FM. Also early in the morning at 1 a.m. And you can listen online at joyfmradio.net. That's joyfmradio.net.
Buenas and half a day to our listeners on Guam and in the CNMI. It's now time for Total Health right here on Joy FM Radio, where your questions get answered by health professionals. If you have any health-related questions, we would love to hear from you. Call your questions and comments in at 472-1111 or text or WhatsApp 686-9999. If you're in the CNMI, please call 323-1113. Welcome everybody to Total Health.
Half a day and welcome to Total Health. Elena Taneva, nurse practitioner, is here. And on his way is Sion Shiranishi, mental health nurse practitioner. But I'll be sitting in for him for a little bit. And the topic that we have is dysfunctional family. And thank you for coming, Elena.
Yes, hi Scott. Actually, I'm very excited about this topic because I heard a talk by Shion several months ago about dysfunctional families. And I said, I think everybody needs to hear that. Because I don't know about you, but I always wonder if my family is functional or highly functional or dysfunctional, or if the families are always dysfunctional, or maybe they're somewhere in the range of, dysfunctionality. Or maybe the families can be functional, but at times they go to dysfunctional mode. And so we have so many questions on family health, and we rarely talk about family health. Mm-hmm. Family health is part of emotional health. And as you know, we're doing the 13 weeks to love, learning how we can increase in love. And we know love starts in the family. And this is where, we feel the most hurt, the most vulnerable. This is where all our joy comes in. And when the joy doesn't come in, we start wondering what's going on. Many times when we don't find that love in the family, we try to find it somewhere else. Sometimes we end up in bad company, and so on and so on. Or maybe we don't know what real love is, what a really functional family is, and then we created our own family and we just pass on this, vicious circle, not even talking about what a healthy family should look like. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm sure you have something to say about it. Me too. When we talk about it, it's a little bit painful because when we look in our family, not everything is ideal. Not everything is like the way we really expect and we want it. But there is a good news. There is a perfect parent.
Oh, and let us know who's the perfect parent is.
Yeah, there is a perfect parent, and he has written a book, a manual of how you can be a parent.
Oh, wow.
Because many people say there is no book, to teach you how to be a parent. I have been a foster parent, and I've done plenty of mistakes. But God is the perfect parent. In fact, he's in the Bible, it says that behold, children are a gift of the Lord. The fruit of the womb is a reward. Like arrows in the hand of a warrior, so are the children of one's youth. How blessed is the man whose quiver is full of them. Isn't that lovely? We have the gift of having kids in the family, and all of a sudden we have a dysfunctional family. So how does that work? God has given us the great example of being the greatest parent ever. But God has attributes that we don't quite have, or we try to develop them. And those parents that are closer to God and can represent God in that direction are really those that can make the most impact in their children's lives. Well, God rules in two different ways, and he combines them very successfully together: justice and mercy. So when God needs to, implement justice, he follows the law, he is transcendent, he is righteous, holy, and he is truthful. And then when it is combined with the mercy comes the grace, the immanence of God, the forgiveness, the compassion, and the grace. Those are amazing things.
It is.
When a parent has all those features, it's so easy for the children to thrive and trust the Lord.
Oh, yes.
But of course, there is a path. You still walk that walk with your Lord, being a member of your family. Well, for human beings, it's more simplified. We, as parents, we have two strategies: control and support.
That's right.
It's so simple. You try to control where you can control, and you try to support as much as you can support.
Yes, that's us parents.
This is what parents are, And if you say, no, I just only support, I don't control, we're going to have problem. Or if you say, I only control, I don't support, wow, we certainly have a problem. So the control refers to the ability to establish rules, to set expectations, and then to apply them in appropriate, apply the appropriate consequences from that. What we often call discipline. While support refers to the disposition to affirm, encourage, relate warmly to, and generally connect with the children. And there are 4 types of families. I'm sure Xian will go into more details about that, in which there's 4 styles of parenting styles, 4 type of styles. So the families that have a low support, they don't support the kids, and they have a low control, are called negligent parents. There is no support, no control. So kids that have negligent parents, they actually have much difficulties in their life really somehow to regulate their emotions. When their parents that have a very high support but low control, they're called permissive parents. Okay, just do it. Okay, whatever you feel, just go ahead and do it. And there are parents like that. They're like, yeah, the child just wants to smoke and wants to drink this. Okay, let's try it. The permissive parents actually bring up kids that they have difficulties to develop social responsibility and interdependence. And actually, the studies show that it's difficult for them to foster self-respect.
Uh-huh.
Yes, because when there are no boundaries, nothing, you just don't think you need to establish any, lasting relationships. And you might struggle into establishing that. I'm sure that rings a bell for some. My mom was very permissive, but my father was very authoritarian. So it means low support and high control.
Oh.
Yes, parents that really want to control you, really want you to have the best grades, they really want you to have the best career, but then they don't support you. They become like a really authoritarian parents. And those are like the ones that children certainly struggle with. They may either seek out highly controlled environment, such as the military base, or having difficulty submitting to authorities at all. Those are the parents that they say my way or the highway. When they say jump, the child needs to say how high.
Oh, yes, I remember that.
Right, and it's very, very difficult for those children. And the children in the families that are authoritative, when there is a high support and high control, it seems that they really benefit the most. So we have high control.
Mm-hmm.
If a human being is left with no control, we know how it ends up. But you have high support. You control, but the moment you control and you support, and when you see you don't have to control them and you step back and let the child be, it's really the best way to go forward. I read a story in the book 13 Weeks to Love that says that a mother had a very difficult time helping and controlling her child. And the child grew up so big that she couldn't drag him. If he said, I don't want to go there, she would just grab him and would take him wherever the child needs to go. But when he grew up, she couldn't do that anymore. And he would be just as stubborn. He would say, I am not going to go anywhere. And so Jennifer Gill, the author of the book, was with that mother one day. And the mother said, please, Johnny, let's go to that place. He said, I am not going to go. And Jennifer said, okay, tell him so. Johnny, let's go to that place. And if you come with us, we're going to stop on the way and buy you your favorite sandwich.
Oh, no.
But if you don't come, then I'm going to pick up your phone and you're going to be deprived from your phone for 24 hours. The choice is yours. Johnny, for the first time, obeyed. For the first time, he came, to and just followed. Because this is the example that God gives us. If there are strict rules and, if they're aligned, the consequences from our choices and the undesired consequences of our choices, and then it is given to us a choice to make, then it is more safe for the children to make their choice. Well, that is exciting that I did get Shion right here, and we are very excited because he has much to say on the topic. Some of the parents don't always know how to exactly deal with the kids. And as human beings, like a sinner bringing another sinner into this world, we try some human strategies, like we beg, we plead, we bribe kids, we nag, we push, we threaten, we abuse, bargain, belittle, frighten. And many times those strategies are just not, futile. They're just futile. They do not work in the families. And of course, as children, we all know those unpleasant moments that we didn't even know how to react, and then we struggle the consequences for that parental behavior. Shion, we're talking about dysfunctional family, and that's a topic you're very passionate about it. I've heard several talk on dysfunctional family, and finally we can have you here.
Yes, I am here. I'm sorry about that, Elena. But yeah, I'm happy to be here at Joy FM and talk about, this topic of dysfunctional family. And I like to talk about this certain topic called dysfunctional family cycle. And I know we're probably going to get into that in a bit, but this is such an important topic. And I've been actually listening to what you've been talking, and this is actually a root cause of most mental health problems. And so when a patient comes and see me, I often talk about this topic because this is truly where I would say over 90% of my patients see that their root problem is from the dysfunctional family. So this is a really good topic to talk about. Yeah.
So, Shion, we would like to know the answer of that question. Are all the families dysfunctional, or some of the families are functional, or some of the families are highly functional, or what's the opposite of dysfunctional family?
Well, I do believe there is a functional family out there because God still leads. God leads people into a very healthy relationship. And so I do believe there are functional family. But I do think majority of us are in a dysfunctional, and it's because we're living in this world of sin, and we all have our faults, and we make mistakes. And so I do think most of us are coming from dysfunctional family. Now, do we actually see it or not? That's the question. And I do have times where people come in, it's pretty obvious, and they even could say, yes, I come from a dysfunctional family. But some people say, oh, my family's perfect, everything's fine, like we all love each other. But it's not till I show them this dysfunctional family cycle that they're like, oh, my family have problems. So, yeah.
But I also have seen those families that we call them perfect families coming and having problems themselves.
Yes, that's what I mean. So you don't know till you actually find out about this topic. Yeah.
Right. We'll continue with Shion right after the break.
What a topic we have, right? Go ahead and call your questions into on Guam, 671-472-1111 in the CNMI 670-323-1113. We're streaming live on Facebook, so go ahead and leave your comments in the comment section below. You can listen live online, joyfmradio.net. We'll be right back.
When you support Joy FM, it may be just another day for you, but to us, it's cause for celebration. Here are just a few of the things we get excited about. Turning the lights on, stamping letters, typing, taking calls. Simple things. But to us, not having to worry about those basic needs means we're able to focus on what we're really passionate about, encouraging and informing our listeners. So thank you for the support, and please keep it coming, because honestly, we really do like making copies.
Si Joe is Mossy, and thanks for listening to Total Health on Joy FM. We want to hear from you. Call in with your health-related questions at 472-1111 in Guam or in the CNMI. The number to call is 323-1113. Text or WhatsApp us at 686-9999. And now, back to the show.
Well, we're here back with more total health and more emotional health. And actually, the topic today is on family health. I believe this is very important. We rarely like to talk about feelings, and guys in general don't like talking about feelings. Yeah. Everything else, but not feelings. Until there's some hurt feelings and a war starts or somebody disappears from this world because somebody has hurt feelings. Therefore, we're going to talk about them, and we're going to start from the family. Yes, you're right. Many times we have patients that they come and we find the root cause and the problems stemming out of the family. But how do we fix those problems in the families when there are so many members involved in it?
Yeah, I think you got to understand first where or what it looks like. Where is it coming from? So maybe I could start with talking about the dysfunctional family cycle. This cycle... There is a cycle that we're stuck in, and it's a generational thing. And so usually just, talking about ourselves, let's start with talking about our parents. So our parents, we hope that they started a healthy relationship. Maybe they had good communication. They were compatible, whatever they thought, and they got married. Now, a lot of times those marriages get ruined. And the common thing that the marriage gets ruined is with addictions. And addictions could be drugs, it could be, sex, it could be food, it could even be religion, it could even be work, it could be money, it could even be culture. So this is pretty much anything that takes up your time and your effort. And you could see that if your time and effort is placed on other things, it doesn't go much to your partner. So that's where a lot of marriages starts to break apart. Now, if kids come in, this is where we come in, where we are born into this world and our parents are stuck in this addiction. Now we actually pay the price too. And there are these 7 types of love that we all need as kids. And those 7 things are affirmation, attention, affection, discipline, guidance, comfort, and protection. Sorry, I'm trying to remember all of them. So those are 7 things that a child need. And a lot of times when there's addiction involved and the parents have their time and effort spent elsewhere, they're missing this love. Even if one of these things are missing, it really affects a child.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, even one. So it could be all missing, or even 2, 3, or 4, even just one will affect a child, and it will affect you.
But it's very difficult to sustain all those qualities in a family.
It is very difficult, but we got to see that God is the Almighty who holds the universe, right? And He is God of love, right? God is love. That's what the Bible says. So love is what sustains everything. And so love should sustain the family. And if we look at God, He provides us all these 7 things. And so we need this in the family too. But if one is missing, or any type of this love is missing, then the family starts to break apart. Yeah. So
it's the lack of love that is causing the dysfunctional family.
I do believe it. And so what happens a lot of times is, and simply said, even the parent is working too much from morning till late in the evening and does not give any attention to a child, no affirmation, not even time to give guidance. that's the time that the child starts feeling lonely, not loved, and that's when problem starts to arise. And we'll get into that next. But love is one of the things that we're missing, and that causes this dysfunction in the family. Yeah.
I think even if one thing is missing and you know that person loves you, that thing can be repaired.
It can be, yes, it definitely can. But we gotta see that there's also a fact that I do want to bring in is, and I'm sure you're aware of this, and most of you listeners might have heard of this, but love language. A child also is a very individual being, and they all have different needs too in the love language realm. And so if a child is more of a words of affirmation, they need that affirmation. But if a parent's good at doing affection, but they're not giving any affirmation, they're actually not giving the love that that child needs. And so we also need to actually understand what our child needs, what is their love language, and all those things too. And even with that missing, it can make an empty space in a child's heart. Yeah.
So the child will try to find it somewhere else?
Yes, and that's it. Yeah, they'll try to find it somewhere else, and we'll get into that for sure. Yeah. But what happens is, I do believe that when love is missing in the family, and there's no attention, no affirmation, no guidance, all those things, then what happens is there's a start of the dysfunction in the family, and then family problem arises. I see that when the love is not centered in the family, that's when problems arises in the family. There's family dramas, all kinds of things. And when this happens, there's 4 rules that a child starts to develop. And so that 4 rule, the very first one is don't talk. And this is a very common rule that a child falls into, and especially in the Chamorro culture, actually. Being a provider here, mental health provider, I see a lot of Chamorro patients, and I could see that this is a very strong rule in this culture here. And what it is don't talk about the problems. Don't talk about family issues. Don't mention anything to your friends. Keep it to yourself. Don't tell your relatives. Don't tell anybody.
Because we're perfect.
Yes, and make our family look like it's perfect. Nothing's wrong. And so that's one of the first rule. And then the second rule a child falls into from all these family problems is don't feel. So if you can't talk about the problems, then you start to say, well, what do I do with my anger? What do I do with my sadness? If I can't talk about it, then the only solution is actually to suppress it, to hide it. So you start hiding it. You don't try to feel it or anything. Then the next rule you fall into is don't trust. Because you're told don't talk about the problems, because, you can't trust anyone. Then you start to say, well, maybe, we're not supposed to trust anybody. So the third rule is don't trust. And then the fourth rule is, you said it yourself, be perfect. Act like everything's okay, be a good child, do well in school, be that child that everyone wants you to be, and just be perfect. And these 4 rules is what every single one of us, probably 1 or 2 or 3 or all, might have fallen into as a child. And what happens is, if you do fall into all 4 of these, the first idea a child starts to think is, this is subconsciously, sometimes maybe consciously, but most of the time subconsciously, is, I'm alone. I can't trust anybody. I can't talk to anyone about anything. I'm alone. And so a child goes into this thought in their brain, I need to survive somehow. I need to survive somehow on my own. And this is where the separation of the family begins even more, where a child just figures out that they're by themselves,
They're like a separate unit from the family.
Yeah.
The family is somehow there, but it hasn't been helpful, so let me find my way out.
Yeah, and there's that disconnection there, yeah. And, you could say, like in the beginning, we kind of said, some people may say I come from a perfect family, but they may not realize till we get to this point where I'm sharing this in a therapy, where they're like, wow, there is actually this disconnection. I did kind of feel something was off. And they'd start saying, yeah, they did give me these rules, and I did feel these rules. And there was part of me that thinking I was on my own kind of thing. And so it does give you that idea of a child that I'm kind of alone. I need to survive.
I've also read, Sean, that a child, when things go wrong, the child does not know how to verbalize it, how to express it, and they start suppressing themselves. They start kind of hating themselves for what is happening, because they cannot hate the parents,
Right.
and they like go against themselves, against their own wishes, and they just start suppressing themselves in a
Yes.
very negative way. Their negative talk starts growing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then, when you have that growing inside of you, like, I got to do something about it, right? And so that's where you go into, your brain goes into this area of, okay, we got to figure out how we're going to survive this. How are we going to deal with these feelings you have? So you start to develop something called survival structures. And so now your brain is developing ways to cope with life problems, your family problems, and just to survive, how to survive. And, I'll give you one example. One example is avoider. So avoider is a survival structure where you try to avoid every conflict out there. And this is how a child learns to survive is, if I don't have to face it, I'm okay. But in reality, is that something that's possible? It's not.
No.
You can't avoid every problem out there. I mean, look at the island, what it faced in May, typhoon. You can't avoid that. It's going to come no matter what. And so avoiding conflict is impossible. And it does cause a stress. And this is what leads into a person into anxiety and depression, because it stresses you out so much. You can't avoid everything kind of thing. But we develop ways to survive negatively, like in sense of being an avoider. Another one you could think of is people pleaser, where they try to please everyone. They try to survive by saying like, oh, if I can make this person happy, then I will be happy. And you're always trying to serve people. You're trying to, right?
But we know you can't please people. You can't make them happy all the time. And even if you do that, it still doesn't make you happy.
Yes.
You want to continue on doing that.
Yes. And often this child that falls into that is trying to please their parents. They didn't get that love, right? Let's go back to that. They didn't get that love that the parents didn't give them. So now they're like trying to please them, trying to make them happy, trying to do well in school.
Try to earn the love.
Trying to earn that love. And then now, because maybe they fell in something, they may get anxious, they may get more stressed, and they think like, I'm a failure, right? But yeah, that's another way that a child learns to try to survive in life. And then another one that I could think of too is controller, someone that tries to control everything, everybody, so this is where many times it's not a very good term, but some people may call someone a control freak, where they're trying to control their partner in marriage or anything like that. So that's, a way to survive is if I could control this the way I want it, everything's going to be okay. But that's also not a reality too, right? And
it snaps back.
Yeah. Yeah. And then it's going to stress you out more too. And
let's face it, like the fact that you're controlling others, it is because you can't control your own emotions and you're trying to control the environment, and the environment is uncontrollable.
Yes. Yeah. And just to kind of name some of the other ones, self-dependent, just relying on yourself. Maybe you might become you might fall into addictions so that you could survive somehow without feeling some things that you don't want to feel, like the anger you're talking about, or feeling sad. So they rely on drugs, alcohol, or sex, or whatever to feel better. Video games, yeah. And, I could go on. The list just keeps going on. Some of the ways that their brain develops unhealthy way to cope with these life problems. And it's really not the best thing for us. Yeah. So,
Sean, where does the codependency come?
This is where codependency come in too. That's a survival structure.
Survival structure.
It is, yeah. So you're trying to survive by pleasing someone, right? But you're just giving, and the other person just takes. And then most of the times, this is the abusive example where one partner is abusing the other partner, and you're just codependent, trying to make them happy. Yeah.
Wow, so many things can go wrong in a family.
Yes, yeah.
We'll continue on that serious topic right after the break.
We are getting into our second break, so we're still waiting for your calls. We got some lines open. Give us a call on Guam, 671-472-1111. In the CNMI, 670-323-1113. You can text WhatsApp 671-686-9999. You can listen live online, joyfmradio.net, and we're streaming live on Facebook. Leave us a comment in the comment section below. We'll be right back.
Welcome back. You're listening to Total Health on Joy FM. Call in with your health-related questions to 472-1111 in Guam. If you live in the CNMI, we want to hear from you too. Call 323-1113 or text or WhatsApp us at 686-9999. And now, here's more Total Health.
Well, Sean, this topic I really don't want to finish. We have just 2 more, breaks before we finish, but please give us as much information as possible so we may know how we can really make from a dysfunctional family functional. There's so many ways that things in the family can go wrong, and rarely we recognize it on time. Sometimes we recognize it when a child has to be arrested, or we realize when somebody has to pay some consequences for the child's behavior.
Yeah, right.
And then we start looking back and say, what went wrong? Well, we rarely talk about it. Also, we mentioned about some parents are helicopter parents. They try to control the child all the time, just not to, show the shame that maybe they don't have the perfect family. They just want to keep the child in a perfect shape so the child can look good. And those are so many wrong tendencies, so many wrong habits in a family. Well, I have a very serious question towards you, but before that, we actually have a call, and a listener is asking a question. We actually have 2. The first question goes this way: how can we tell if we have the love language?
Okay, yeah, so that's the best way to do it is actually take the 5 love language tests by Gary Chapman. You can actually go online and take the quiz, or you can even purchase the book, and you can find it anywhere. It's a very popular book, the 5 love languages by Gary Chapman, and it's a very easy test to take, and you can find out if you're either your love language, physical touch, words of affirmation, spending quality time, gifts, or acts of service. So, yeah.
Right. I always thought I'm something, but then when I did a test, I'm actually all of them. And I came to the conclusion, you will tell me, maybe I'm wrong, that the more you grow in, you can actually grow in love. And the more you grow, the more you become like Christ, because Christ used all those love languages, right?
Yes.
We maybe have 1 or 2 dominant,
Yes.
but it is important to grow in all of them.
Yes, it's true. You can't just say, I'm words of affirmation, my top, but I just can't be like, that's all I know, or that's all I want, or whatever. I have to understand how the other love languages work, because like I said, every single one of us speak in our love language differently, and it's best to be understanding of all of them. Yeah.
And actually every family, they have their own love language, between themselves, things that they understand. They don't have to even speak many times. They can just look at each other, and which can be used for good and, for bad as well.
For sure.
I'm sure we can, many people would ask you this question. Actually, we do have a caller asking you, what do we do when the family, if I understand it correctly, do family members don't communicate for a long period of time? Do members of the family for long periods of time stay without communicating with each other? Maybe the question wants to say,
how do you deal with that?
How do you deal with that?
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's a probably another topic actually, but I do think it's best to try to reconcile. The Bible does talk about how it's really interesting in Malachi, I believe it's chapter 4. It talks about how before the coming of the Lord, that He will want the hearts of the father to be turned to the child, and the child's heart to be turned to the fathers. And this is a picture of reconciliation. This is a picture of how God really wants to restore family. And so at the end of the day, it's best to try to, if you have a family member you're not communicating with, or you have anger or bitterness towards, it's best to work it out. Maybe my story, which I'll probably share in a little bit, might help you in this question, actually, the way that you could go about it. But yeah. But I think that the best thing to do is to actually follow through of understanding this dysfunctional cycle first, because maybe perhaps you're having a hard time with your relationship with that certain family member, or even not just that family member, but other people like friends, your husband, your wife, sister, brother, whoever it is. You might be having a hard time because you're actually falling into a survival structure, if that makes sense. So if you're a avoider, you're going to avoid every conflict. So how can you have a better relationship with someone if you're avoiding conflicts all the time? Conflicts are not a bad thing. They help relationship to actually grow more. You resolve it together, you through that understand each other better, and you become better people, and you grow and as a family or in a relationship. So you maybe from understanding which survival structure you might be under can help you to realize, oh, maybe this is why I'm having difficulty with relationships, especially in my family. Yeah.
Well, if you recognize a pattern in a parent or in a child that, it's quite dysfunctional, how do you address it? Do you just go to the person and say, I think you're a controller. I think this is what's wrong with you. Why don't you change? This is something I would do, and I would say it to my sister. And my sister will come and she will, snap back some comments, because we feel very free to talk in the family, but I don't think I have ever had any good result out of it.
That's funny. Yeah, I mean, and I just laugh because, I know that a lot of people, we tend to do that, even myself, or we do prefer to correct people. And I'm not saying that this is not what you do, Elena, but I think I'm guilty of this. There's a common saying of walk the talk, right? So if you do believe that we need to work on some of the survival structure we're struggling with, whether that's being controlling, people-pleasing, or whatever it is, it could be that we need to actually work on it, and then people could see the change you go through, and that will speak louder than you trying to tell someone, hey, you're doing something wrong. And another aspect to do is you could probably talk to someone about it, but if you can't back it up by saying, hey, this is what God has done for me, and I overcame my survival structure, and I know I struggle with this still today, but I know that there's a way out. And if you come from that perspective of, hey, we both struggle with survival structures, why don't we help each other? Let's be accountable. Maybe that's a better approach too. We just need to understand that we all struggle the same things. Yeah.
Wow. So does it mean that I have to have a compassion for that person, to study that person? I don't think people in general know what structures they're coping with.
Right.
There is no education about that. Nobody talks about emotions. So how do you know how to correct somebody? How do you know how you can even change yourself?
Yeah, it's true. So, this is why I personally believe therapy is really important. We really need guidance. I didn't notice stuff on my own. I didn't come up with this stuff on my own. One day I was like, oh, dysfunctional family cycle and, all these things. I actually went to a counselor, and my counselor helped me and talked me through it. I understood my survival structures and where it came from, my family past, everything. And that's where I started to grow from it. And so unless if you actually seek out a professional help, it's hard to kind of make sense of this sometimes. But I do believe it's possible. And the only thing that's possible is not people, but God. God Almighty is powerful enough to show you these things and guide you to it. And so I don't necessarily say we need men to teach us. The Bible teaches us so many things about dysfunctional family cycle. I mean, this whole Bible story is about generational dysfunction cycle that is continuing since Adam and Eve. And God is trying to break this. And one of the things that he's trying to break this through is Jesus. Jesus came and to be part of this dysfunctional family cycle. I mean, what in the world, you know? He came from a perfect place in heaven, perfect family, came down to be part of a dysfunctional family cycle to show us a better way to break that cycle. And so I do believe we can learn this from Jesus too. But if we try to figure out on our own, it's really hard. Yeah.
And I do believe that God specializes in dysfunctional families.
Yes.
This is where his glory, comes up and where he can be glorified. Like, look at the family of Jacob. What a dysfunctional family.
Yeah.
Like, if I think of a dysfunctional family, this is the family that comes to my mind.
Yes.
But like such a beautiful and deep story came out of so much tragedy.
Yes. Yeah, it's true. And I think that we see God restoring many, many times the families, and it all did start from even Adam and Eve. When Eve decided to eat that fruit and sinned, she did give it to Adam. And it's interesting, since the beginning, we were onto each other from the beginning. Like, when God came and looking for Adam and Eve, the first thing Adam says, it's the woman's fault. It's because of her that I did this. And then Eve basically blames Satan. But yeah, we've been playing this blaming games. It's her fault, his fault. It's my family's fault and all these things. And it's true. But this whole dysfunctional family cycle isn't to blame anyone, but it's to really see that we're all struggling from this, and we really need to ask God to help us to break this cycle, which in the Bible, it gives us many examples, many answers of how to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, fear chases love away. I mean, Adam was really in love with Eve. But when the fear came, he's like,
yes.
I have nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
And so in many families like that, we do have our fears that we are not addressing them.
Yes.
And that the fear just chases away love. And when we don't address that, it becomes a very big separation, as you mentioned.
Yeah, and that's the thing. The fear and love is related. I think Adam was scared that he's going to be missing out with this love that he had with Eve, that closeness and things like that. So when we're scared of losing love, I think we're willing to do anything, even to sin.
Right.
But the thing is, this is where we need to fill our heart with the real love, with Jesus' love, right? And starting from this whole topic of dysfunctional family cycle, we talked about how love was missing in the family. That's why it comes down to it. This love was missing. We let addictions come in, we let other things come in, and then love was destroyed, And we tend to try to fill it. And this is where survival structure come in, where we're trying to be a people pleaser, trying to fill our empty heart with love of people. Like, please love me, I'll do this for you, right? Or being controller, trying to control everything and make everything perfect. And this is how, maybe I'll be okay. I'll feel safe. I'll feel peace. And we're all looking for something. And what we're looking for is security. And that security could only be found in love. And this is why I think Jesus did come down to show us what real love is. And he filled our heart with the real love. And so what it comes down to is when we see Jesus, it really gives us a sense of peace that I don't want to fight anymore for this love that I've been trying to get from my parents or even boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife. Because we see that Jesus could fill our heart. This is the answer. This is where we find the healing.
Or that I have to become a lovable person, or I have to become perfect so I can be loved, or I have to look certain way. Yes, it is a struggle for all of us. There is a question, and we'll continue after the break, but the question goes this way: favoritism with our, parents, and what do we do? How does that affect the children? Our children. Okay, we'll continue very soon.
Call in your question on Guam, 671-472-1111. In the CNMI, 670-323-1113. Text and WhatsApp, 671-686-9999. We're streaming live on Facebook. Just leave your comment in the comment section below. You can listen live online, joyfmradio.net. We only got about 10 minutes left. We'll be right back.
My ceiling fan chain is hanging up there. I pull high, medium, low, and I need some air. How I wish I had a chain out the side of my head. I'd pull it once for high so I could get out of bed. When the day's underway, I'd select medium, an even speed that combats the frantic and tedium. And when it's time to rest, I'd pull it to low, and then go to bed and nod off real slow. But as it is, my life is always in fast. I wish I had that chain to make my motor last.
What's your day like today? Wish it could shift out of high speed for a little bit? Well, here at Joy FM, we're the kind of station that doesn't yank your chain. We're here to provide a positive place that's not hectic and not dull, because the music and message we provide are the medium that helps keep your motor running smooth. Thanks for letting us provide some fresh air in your life.
And we're back with more Total Health. Give us a call with your medical questions. Number to call in Guam is 472-1111. If you're in the CNMI, the number to call is 323-1113. Or you can text or WhatsApp us at 686-9999. Now back to the program.
We're continuing back with more questions from our audience. And the question is, what do we do, Shion, with the favoritism? It does really affect the children. I have been, I don't want to say like a victim, but I have really suffered from that, from thinking that my parents really loved my sister more, and I had to start going to child psychologists from a young age.
Wow. Yeah, it's a serious thing. It does happen more than we think, I think. But parents would say, oh, no, we don't have favoritism, but, it does exist. Yeah. And how does it affect a child? I can't say it's the same thing for everyone, but I think it does lean towards most children going to the route of wanting to please their parents, trying to earn their affection or love because their whole attention is on this other child. And so they may develop insecurity, probably. They're like, am I not good enough? What do I have to do to get also the favoritism, I guess, Yeah.
And you're trying, and I remember not feeling good enough, and doesn't matter how much I study and how many degrees I have, like you always feel that you have to be proving yourself to the world until you kind of realize and relax that there is somebody that loves you completely unconditionally, and you don't have to be someone. You can just be yourself.
Yeah. And, it may lean into extremes of survival structure, like, for example, codependency. You might become a codependent person where you're just trying to please, give kind of thing. And even though they're not really giving you the attention or the love and abusing you even. And so that might happen. Or the other extreme is you might be like, you know what, fine. I'm just going to be alone and I'm going to be Miss Independent or Mr. Independent and I don't need anybody, and you might become a self-dependent person. So you might end up being either extremes on the other side, or one of the sides, yeah.
Shion, so can every family become functional? Or some families are just doomed? They will never repair themselves?
I think it's possible for every family to repair their dysfunctional cycle. It's just a choice that we need to make. And, I could testify for that because I have a lot of patients that restore their family, all ages. I have all ages coming to see me. And I even had a 50-year-old come in and say, wow, I went through myself dysfunctional family cycle, and I put my kids into dysfunctional family cycle. I want to make this better. And you know what? He went home and he showed his adult children all the 7 love. He never hugged his kids before. He never told him, I love you. And he went home and said, I love you, son. And he hugged him. And the son was like, what? Are you okay? What's going on? And he thought something was wrong with him. But he realized he was being genuine. And my patient came back saying, my family dynamic's so different now. It's so much better, more connection, feel connected with each other. And so it's never too late. It's possible. Yes.
Is it just by showing love to others, more love and caring more for their needs than for your own personal needs? Or how does it work?
I think from the perspective of parents, yeah, we need to really go back to that 7 love and say, what did I do wrong in the past? And, ask God for forgiveness for maybe a mistake you made. Maybe you were too critical, criticizing your kids. That could really hinder your kids. You may end up making them into perfectionists, where if they're not perfect, then they're going to keep getting criticized. And so you got to really go back to, man, what did I do wrong? And be willing to admit to it. But if you're the child side and you got this maybe love that your love wasn't met and you fell into survival structures, there's actually a different outlook we need to go into now. Is the question is, how do you view your parents? And this is where my story kind of comes in, where I discovered that I had many survival structures. And that was causing me to fall into many addictions, unhealthy relationships. And so my story goes is that at 10 years old, I was born in Japan, but my family moved to California when I was 5. At age 10, my parents were not doing well in their marriage. And so they separated. My dad lived in a different home. And basically, one day, my mom was like, hey, let's go tell your dad to come home. So I made a big poster saying, Dad, come home, and all these things. And so we went there in intention of telling him, we love you, and come home. When we got there, we rang the doorbell. No one answered. Looked through the window. There was nothing there. And we were so confused. And what we found out soon after that was my dad left and went back to Japan and left us in California. After that, it broke my heart. My dad was my best friend. We used to do all like skiing, playing hockey together and everything. And he left, and I was like, my heart was broken. It's like my heart was just stumbled on the ground, basically. And I thought it was my fault too, the reason why he left. And anyways, imagine the bitterness that grew in me. I was so angry at my dad, and, that anger drove me in life. And I was like, forget everything. And I got into, again, addictions, unhealthy relationships. And soon in my 20s, I wasn't heading anywhere. And I actually fell into depression and anxiety, deep depression, to a point where I wanted to end my life. It wasn't until the day that I met my counselor, and she taught me a lot of things that we're talking about. And I realized, I didn't name it before, but I realized there was bitterness inside of me towards my father, and this whole time. And that was leading me nowhere good in my life. And that's the whole point of this dysfunctional family cycle. It's not to blame our parents. It's to recognize that we're all sinners, and we all struggle, and we all make mistakes. And to recognize that there might be certain things in your heart that you've been holding on to that's causing a lot of issues in your life. Depression, anxiety, marital problems, anything. And we need to come to realization that we need to let that go. And so as a child, the part for us to play is letting that bitterness go, and to also forgive our parents, So I called my dad actually after that, and I said, Dad, I've been so mad at you. I have bitterness towards you. But you know what? I don't want this anymore. And I know Jesus can help me to take this away. And I want Jesus to reconcile us. And so I said, please forgive me. Please forgive me for being angry at you. And my dad was so shocked. He was like, wait, shouldn't I be asking your forgiveness? And, it was a beautiful moment where my dad's like, wow, well, I'm sorry for everything I've done too. And we had a reconciliation there, and, our relationship is better now. And I feel like I was able to overcome many survival structures because of that moment of letting that bitterness go. And so we really need to do our part as a child to forgive our parents and to let those bitterness go. And that's one of the steps to overcome these survival structures. Yeah.
Well, Sean, thank you so much for being real you, for being so vulnerable. I believe everybody can relate in one way, because we all come with some, surviving structures.
Yeah.
Life is very painful. We don't always know how to address it. Sometimes we increase that bitterness. Instead of becoming better, we become more bitter.
Yeah.
And it takes skills. It takes maturity and, guidance from God to get there. And only through God that it is possible.
Mm-hmm.
I have never told you, but my family, my grandfather was a rich man, and when he died, he gave everything to my cousins.
Mm-hmm.
And, our aunties and, my mom, they were fighting, the whole extended family for a long time. But we, the cousins, we decided we're not going to go over that. We reconciled. We didn't care about the money. We decided we are not going to spoil our relationship over things like that.
Yep.
And we worked it out. And actually, our cousin that inherited everything shared with the rest.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Because that was a way of repairing a dysfunctional extended family.
Yes, and that's powerful. That when a family does that, it's so beautiful. That moment when you can experience that is the best gift ever from God. It really is so much better than anything in this world you could have. The experience of true love of Christ being in your family is one of the best experiences. And so it's awesome that you experience that kind of reconciliation. Yeah.
Right. And I believe God is ready to do miracles in every family.
Yes.
Many times we condemn our parents, we blame our children. But if we look for patterns, if we look for the causes, and we really can have empathetic response to it, realizing why they had to go through that, showing compassion, understanding them, showing love, I believe many things can change.
Yeah. You make a point of understanding it because the cycle shows that our parents also went through stuff with their parents, and then our grandparents went through stuff with their parents, and we've all been through rough times, and we've all went through this missing this love that we need. So I think that's something that we're all longing for. Yeah. And that's the answer is Jesus. Yeah.
Sinners bring up other sinners, and this is how it goes. And in family where the father is very nurturing and the mother shows some strong guidance, it's are actually the families that are very strong.
Yes.
So I do encourage everybody to be more emotional, to to be more nurturing. And I believe you have few words more to share with us.
Yeah, before we finish, I want to say that verse I was talking about earlier, Malachi chapter 4, 5, and 6. It says, "Behold, I'll send Elijah prophet before the coming of the great dreadful day of the Lord. He will turn the hearts of the fathers to the children, and the hearts of the children to their fathers." So this is really what God is trying to do. This is the will of God. And so I plead with everyone that's listening, if there's any bitterness towards any family member or anything brokenness, it's today that we could fix it. And it's through God we could fix it. So, yeah.
Amen.
Thank you, Elena, and thank you, Sion, for the show. And thank you, listeners. Tune in next Wednesday for more Total Health Live.
Be sure to check with your doctors before making any sudden life changes discussed today. Total Health is brought to you in partnership with Guam Seventh-day Adventist Clinic, where health is their mission. We look forward to seeing you next Wednesday. Thank you, and si Juas Masi for listening to Total Health right here on Joy FM.
You're listening to KSDA 91.9 FM Ag